the great thing about the whole series of books is her plots and the way she weaves history in there. So there's it's a whole world, Jo Rowling and her plot. It's mathematical, it's so complex, it's beautifully done. And even at the end, you're still discovering things.
Ahoj Komikone, tady Draky z Festivalu Fantazie, kde jsme pro vás natočili spoustu nového materiálu do dalších dílů. Ale ještě předtím vám pustíme úplně první originální rozhovor, který kdy pro Comic Con Talks vznikl, protože on Mark Williams vlastně může za to, že celý ten pořad existuje. Na Comic Conu Junioru mě totiž to vyhecoval, proč nedělám nějaký podcast, když je to dneska přece tak hrozně jednoduchý. A na můj drzej dotaz, jestli v tom případě přijde jako první host, překvapivě nevycouval. No, ono to teda zas tak jednoduchý není, což se ukázalo na hnedka několika technických failech, které se mi povedly. Ale na moji obranu proti černé magii vyrazit s vypučenou technikou a nulovýma zkušenostma na vlastní pěst někam doprostřed Anglie, to byl takhle na začátek trošku ostrý quest. A natočím vám extra video s celým příběhem, protože to je takovej horor, že by Voldemort zaplesal. Ale pro tuhle tu chvíli to snad stačí jako vysvětlení, proč je například za Markem vidět průhled do jeho kuchyně. A na druhou stranu, jak často vám opravdický Weasley dá nahlídnout do kuchyně v doupěti? Věřím, že si ten autentický pohled pod pokličku Harryho Pottera, Červeného trpaslíka a doktora Who užijete a uvidíme se spolu za 14 dní u dalšího videa, tentokrát talk show s nejsametovějším drsňákem českého dabingu Martinem Stránským. We are sitting here with Mark Williams, ready to talk about Harry Potter and Red Dwarf and movies and books and stories in general. But I have to ask you first about your memories and impressions from Comic Con Junior in Brno.
In Brno, I liked Brno. I like the trams because Brno never got rid of the trams. So many English cities, they ripped up the lines and now they're putting them back. But you've got is it Shalina?
Shalina, yeah.
Shalina,
right.
Electric-Shalina, because it's from the German, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Mendel's monastery was great. It was good to see where a scientist works, because you often have lots of places where artists worked and writers and musicians, but you don't often see where a scientist worked out their thing. So that was very exciting. I like that very much. And the food was good.
Well, we have some questions from the lovely Harry Potter community in Czech Republic, which is called Potterfan. And the first of them would be, was that enough, or would you like to come back?
I've been to Prague a few times. I liked it a lot. I like the Tractor Museum. I like tractors. And I like the puppetry, Prague Puppet Theatre. And I think I like puppetry. I don't know why exactly, but I think the thing about puppetry is it's very local. It's not like international. Each puppetry theatre is different, and they do things in a different way, and they have their own stories and their own style, and that's very interesting. I'd quite like, if I ever have time, I'd quite like to do that and go and film that. In fact, that's a really good idea.
Oh yeah.
I'll see if I can get a documentary about puppetry. But who would buy that?
Well, Czech people might. We really like our puppetry. You managed to go quite around the world, thanks to Harry Potter. Which interesting places you went to?
Well, I really like going to Scandinavia because it was really good because Dan and Emma and Rupert, I think they had enough of doing the publicity, so they went down the cast list. And some of the older ones didn't want to do it. And then it was like, Mark, will you go to Scandinavia? Yes. So Stockholm and Oslo I enjoyed very much. I had a good time there. I love ships, and it was great to see Vasa and Fram. Fram is one of my favourite ships. I think it's extraordinary. And it's good. The Norwegians say we have Fram and the Swedes have Vasa, but Vasa sank. Yes.
Well, what struck me the most when we were doing the Q&A in Brno were the questions from the children's fans, because they were very different from what we usually get from the adults.
Yeah. Sometimes they come out with stuff like that they've seen, and they ask you about it. Yeah, I love that. A lot of times people tend to ask you what your favourite this and your favourite that is, and I'm not very good at favourites. It's like you choose things, and I don't really do that. That's my favourite. But I don't do it. I go, that's my... I like that one, and that one with that one, and that one with that one. But it's the idea that you just choose one. I can't do that. No.
Do you think they kind of perceive you, because you played Arthur Weasley, as kind of a fatherly figure? Do they maybe confide in you?
Yeah, people talk about him being a father, and they like the romance of him being a good father. Whether he was or not, we don't know. And sometimes people want, reassurance from me, which I can't really give them all the time, but I try. If they didn't have a good father figure themselves, people often latch on to Mr. Weasley, which I am proud of.
And do you feel some kind of responsibility to maintain some kind of a public image that would be okay for kids?
I don't really have a different public image to my private image. I don't. I hope. I mean, I don't understand how you can behave differently. It's like, do you think about how you behave or don't you? And if you do, then you should be a good person, or try to be, I guess. Maybe not.
Well, I've got a few questions about the fatherly figure that Arthur Weasley was, because it seemed like it was a kind of a fantasy of J.K. Rowling of how a perfect father would look like.
I don't know about that. But I mean, he was the only father that didn't get killed. Sirius Black, Dumbledore. So he was the only kind of semi-father figure for Harry that survived. But apparently she was going to kill him off at one point.
Yeah.
But I didn't really get involved in all of that, all the speculation. I didn't think it was healthy. I just used to wait to see if I was in the script. And that was great. Thank you very much.
And don't you regret that you didn't have like this heroic, death scene?
Yeah, well, not death scene, no. But I would, towards the end, Arthur wasn't very important, really. Lots of things, and it was frustrating sometimes to think that I'm not really a part of this. So yeah, that was. But anybody would feel like that.
Did you get any feedback, any notes back from J.K. Rowling?
J.K. didn't get involved in the shooting.
Oh.
Which was a brilliant decision on her part. And when she'd handed it over to Steve Kloves and David and whoever was directing, I mean, I'm sure she spoke to people behind the scenes and off the record, but she didn't come on set. She was pleased I was cast originally, so that was really nice. That was great. The great thing about the whole series of books is her plots and the way she weaves history in there. So there's it's a whole world, and that's her chief brilliance, in my opinion. Jo Rowling and her plot. It's mathematical, it's so complex. It's beautifully done, and even at the end, you're still discovering things. When the actor David Ryle, I can't remember his character, is talking to Harry and he says, "Did you know, Dumbledore?" It's a great line, a brilliant line, that Harry thinks he knows all about Dumbledore. He knows nothing.
Well, you've read the books. Yeah. Do you think that there are some parts that you are really sorry that are missing from the movies?
When I auditioned for Chris Columbus, they're called meetings, but it's an audition. He said, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "I love the first scene when Arthur arrives home and gets rid of the gnomes on the lawn." And he said, "We're not shooting that." And it's like, oh, okay. So I wish they'd shot that.
And when you read the books, were you imagining yourself in one of the roles?
Yes.
Was there a calling?
I read the books. I read the first book before they made the film, and and the second book. And I thought about Mr. Weasley then, and I thought, I know what I'd do with him. He's quite mousy and quiet, and he's a much smaller character in a lot of ways in the books. But I thought he would be much more, I thought of him as bigger, more enthusiastic, more jolly hockey sticks. That's a very English phrase. Jolly hockey sticks. Morning Weasleys! So that's how I imagined him. And that's what they wanted. Thank you, Chris.
Well, have you read those books to your kids? Because they were at kind of the right age at the time.
No, I didn't read the Weasley books to them. I read lots of other books, but no, I never. They're not Weasley books. They're Harry Potter books.
Weasley books. I like
didn't
that.
read the Harry Potter books to them. No, but I did read a lot. I love reading to kids. I just adore it. It's just one of the most beautiful things to do. And as an actor, I feel like it's the best thing I do. Read to children.
But you've done some audiobooks.
Not very many, and quite some time ago. I enjoyed it. Yeah, you get into a kind of zone. I think it must be a bit like practicing music, where you're on your own in a room practicing your violin or something. Yeah, there's no distraction. It's very seductive in a way.
And were you maybe tempted to do the Harry Potter audiobooks?
Yes, I suggested to my agent when I read the first one, I said, who's doing the audiobooks? And Stephen Fry. Oh, okay, sorry.
And is there any book that you would love to read?
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Ridley Walker by Russell Hoban. Bohemil Hrabel's books, I'd like to read those, because I think I would be a good Hrabel, especially the autobiographies, which I love. I love his work. I love his autobiography. He's genius, writing a 3-volume autobiography from the point of view of his wife. Superb. That's amazing. I love that.
What do you think it makes them, they translate so well between the Czech culture and the British culture?
I think there is a real similarity in the way he looks at the world with British people, not aristocratic British people, but working class British people. That sense of humour and the idea that, it's not all important and you need to have some kind of distance and how he's amused by the world itself. I'm really one of my favourite stories is The Death of Mr. Baltusberger, where you only realise at the end that it's about this guy dying because it's just two guys talking about nonsense, and incidentally, a man dies during this story. I think it's brilliant.
You usually state that the flying scenes from Harry Potter are your favorite.
Oh yeah, I always say that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was more interested in the scene when Arthur gets bitten by the snake.
Oh, we did that one day, late one day, and it only took an hour maybe. Yeah. It was a Steadicam operator.
He was biting him, biting you with.
Yeah.
And I think it worked very well.
Yeah, I haven't seen it for a while. If indeed I ever saw it.
Have you seen all of the movies?
Yeah, I have, but often when you're watching them in a premiere, you're not really kind of as focused as maybe you could be.
Why come?
Because you're nervous.
Oh, it's the first time when you can see it?
Yeah, they don't kind of show it to you.
You don't have any preliminary screenings? You go
not
see
really,
everyone.
no.
That must be a lot. There must be a lot of anxiety in that.
Yeah, although one of the reasons why everybody's always smiling on the red carpet is you finished, and everybody's going like, "Hooray! It's over." you look at the faces next time, and they're all going, "Yes, I'm free."
And are there any other memorable scenes that you remember?
My favourite scene in the whole franchise is when Voldemort takes the Elder Wand from Dumbledore in his grave, and it's a brilliant piece of acting because you've never seen Tom Riddle really, you've never seen, and just in that moment, Rafe does this great thing where you realise that he really thinks he can do it now. He really believes in himself. It's a lovely scene.
But there were some night shoots that you weren't particularly.
Oh, night shoots! We were doing night shoots in the winter, and of course it gets dark at 4 o'clock, and doesn't get light until 9 o'clock, and it's like no.
Though I guess those are the times when you just get to.
Yeah, just got to work. It's just work. I've had people say to me, "Oh, you're an actor. That must be fun," and I say, "Fun? Like a game? You mean? Like playing? No, it's a job. It's a craft, and you have to work at it. And having fun is not what you're there for.
And do you have fun at least sometimes?
Yeah, you have. Of course, you do. Like you do it, like you have in an office. You know, when you have fun, when you're laughing at each other, and when you get things right. But you don't you're not playing.
Well, you've experienced working for British TV, British movies, and American productions, like big Hollywood movies. Is there any difference, really?
Money. Although technically Harry Potter was a British production, I've worked a lot with American, not so much crews, but with American directors and writers, and I enjoy it very much. But on set, I would say no. There's not really any difference. You're still working to achieve what is written, you know. So that takes what it takes, and the technology has changed. I know that. When I first started doing big movies, like 101 Dalmatians was the first big movie I made, and then The Borrowers and stuff. They've all involved CGI and different scales, you know. You know, working with puppies and stuff who aren't really there, you know. Don't touch the puppies. We were not allowed to touch the puppies because of infection. So you'll never see the only one that Hugh holds. I think he's the only one who holds a puppy. That's animatronic. He makes it come alive again.
That wasn't a real one.
No. And in fact, it arrived in a box, you know, with the batteries and stuff. And the director said, "There goes the neighbourhood," which amused me greatly at the time. When I first started doing big films, technology was good, but it's improved so much better. Even by the end of the Harry Potter franchise, what we were doing was much more ambitious than what we started with. I know there is a strange analogy, really. It's a bit like technology in war. It just improves really quickly when you've got a problem to solve.
Well, I've heard another nice one from you. It was comparing actors to men of faith regarding the
Oh no, I think I meant to be an actor, you have to have faith. Well, you've got to believe at some point in the future, because you have no control over what you do. It's a fantasy that people say. And I think people talk about actors and they go, why didn't they do this and why did they do that? Because that's what was there, you know, that's what you got offered. People who talk about a career, it's like, really? You've got a career, you know, like a doctor, where you move up? No, it's luck. It's are you going to get a job?
Even after all those years and those roles you've
had?
had?
I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm going to work when I finish this or ever again. They may just cancel this show, you know. You're always thinking about that. Always. All actors are. What's the next job? And am I going to get one? Which is tiring, to be honest.
Yeah. Because for you, even it was quite hard in the beginning. You had to have this weird job.
It's hard for everybody. Yeah, I did all sorts of things. Yeah, worked in a mental institution, and I was a painter, house painter, like Hitler, and and I worked on a stud farm, artificial insemination station. So yeah, I did some weird stuff. But then you've got to, you know, pay the rent.
Yeah.
And then you go off and do theatre for 6 weeks and it's all marvellous, and then you come back and it's like, okay, that's what now?
Do you still do theatre?
I haven't done theatre for 10 years, largely because I haven't been able to, I've been busy. But I do live appearances. I work with orchestras, which I've done for a few years, which I really enjoy supplying the words, you know, when the programme involves words and music. Just reading, really. I love it. I love
reading
that.
With some nice music in the background.
Well, the rhythm affects you. You know, you can kind of think of it more musically when you're surrounded by musicians.
But I know it's ancient history. But do you remember anything from your time? Because I'm a massive Red Dwarf fan. I literally have seen every episode like 100 times.
Yeah, I remember the first episode was brilliant, and there were loads of us. In Manchester, and we were all young, and we had a good time. But then, of course, we all got killed, and it was like, okay. And then off went Red Dwarf, and we were all dead. And it was a bit like, it was such a great thing to have, and then taken away straight away. I think all of us kind of wished that we'd continue as a crew, and the franchise, which indeed it is, would be about that, but it wasn't. It was just about the three of them. So there we go.
Yeah, but
that
you returned.
is showbiz.
Oh.
Yeah, only briefly.
That is show business. Yeah. Well, yeah, they brought you back, and there were even some rumors, because when Chris Berry left the show in like it was 7th or 8th season, they were deciding they needed a new character to maintain the dynamics, and actually Olaf Peterson was Doug Naylor's favorite solution.
Really?
Did they ever approach you with that?
No, they didn't know.
Oh.
One thing about Chris Barry leaving is I'd never understand people leaving a show. Why? Why do that? Because it'll be something better? No, there never is.
Well, he returned a year later, so
there
I guess.
Bingo.
Now, I guess it might be tiring, you know.
Yeah.
But
so what?
Yeah. It's
Get
work.
over it. Walk it off, son. You ain't hurt.
Well, it's stated in Red Dwarf that Olaf Peterson, your character, was very smooth with ladies. It was one of the later episodes.
He said that. I don't think he was.
Oh, one thing that's too bad about you not coming back to Red Dwarf was because you have quite a big interest in industrial history.
Yeah.
Which is something that you share with Chris and also with Hetty Hayridge, who are both, you know, they go on their little walks through transportation museums and stuff.
Yeah, I did some series. Yeah, I came up with the idea for Chris Barry actually, because I couldn't do it, called Massive Engines. Yeah, that was my idea actually.
Oh. I think he's very happy about that. Did he thank you?
I don't think so. No. I can't remember that. But yeah, it was my idea.
Yeah, but I've seen one of the documentaries that he did was like On the Rails or something.
Yeah.
And you were such an enthusiastic host. Yeah. I've never seen a presenter.
I don't see the point if you've got all this marvelous stuff. Yeah, people who go like this. But it's just like, get involved, be real.
Yeah, and you seem to be really happy to be on the steam engine.
I'm always happy to be working. I think working is very important. I think when you're not working, all you're doing is not working. Mm-hmm. I ain't no hippie. Chill out. No.
Yeah, I like to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so if you're this interested in technology, this might be quite easy, because one of the Arthur Weasley's greatest ambition was to learn how aeroplanes stayed up. Yeah. Have you fulfilled his ambition?
No. I think, it's the laminar flow over the uplift. No. I can't do physics. And the point about physics is the more you learn about the physics, you realise that it doesn't explain anything.
Yeah.
You know, kind of 21st century physics has no idea how anything works.
I love how we think that we understand everything.
I don't understand anything.
Yeah, and the science especially, and that there are these little things that we don't understand, like how was all this created?
Do you know the thing I think is most extraordinary to me is people think they understand themselves or other people. Do you?
Yeah, I think that might be even harder than understanding like how the universe was created. Yeah. Because I think maybe books are one of the ways how you can do it. It's a way how to read someone else's mind.
Well, I think that fiction can often teach you more about humanity than psychology, I think.
And it's the only way how to look into someone else's feelings and everything. Yeah. Because in movies you can, but there's still so much left for your imagination. In the books, it's all... Yeah,
which is why we're fascinated by fiction and why actors are so important to people, because there's another human being that's not next to you, that you can look at in a different way. And I think that's why actors have quite a big hold over people's imaginations.
You read quite a lot, don't you?
Yeah, I do read a lot, yeah.
And how many, do you have an estimation on how many books you read every year?
I don't know, 3 or 4 a week, probably. So
3 or 4 a week?
yeah, I guess so.
Oh my God. Wow.
I don't really watch television or films. I watch them every now and again, but I read mostly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've always got about 4 or 5 books on the go by the side of my bed. I've always read ever since a child, and my daughter reads as well, which is good.
Oh.
I'm pleased that she's got that.
Do you know where this love for books stems from?
My love for books comes from my parents, I'm sure, because our house had lots of books in it, and they always read, and so it was always important. And it obviously gave them a great deal of pleasure, so yeah.
How is it different to work with children actors? Because you did that on Harry Potter, also on Father Brown. You have some young characters.
Yeah, and on the Borrowers and
yeah.
You have to be understanding that it's all new for them, and they're great to work with. You know, they have their energy, and then sometimes they don't. Well, it's like doing anything with kids. You know, it's a privilege.
But sometimes that's a nice story that you told us in Brno. Sometimes you would kind of use that little fact that the kids are not allowed to work for those long hours.
Oh yeah, me and Maggie found ourselves. She said, "Are you doing what I'm doing?" I said, "Yeah, I think so, Maggie." I used to stand next to Ginny and put my hand on her shoulder. So when she'd finished, I had to go too. I didn't do it all the time, but it just happened once or twice.
And how long did it take for you to remember the names of all of your movie kids?
I can't remember all of them, because some of them, there's some up that we never saw.
Yeah, that's right. You watched the kid actors grow. You had this opportunity. Was there any one of them that really surprised you in which way he went?
I guess since the end, although it's not a surprise actually, but Bonnie has become a director, and I think I saw that earlier. Yeah, that was interesting. It's like, there you go, very interesting.
You know, it must have been quite hard for them, you know, growing up on the set. I've talked with few of the kids that were on the show, and they all described a certain loneliness, you know, amongst, even if they were, you know, amongst other kids and the school on the set.
Yeah, well, being an actor can be quite lonely, yeah. But then doesn't everybody get lonely sometimes, you know? Don't footballers get lonely? But it's long hours and you're away from home, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So you don't go home at night. You go to a hotel room or something. Yeah. And you're up before everybody else, you up at 5 o'clock or something. So you don't have a lot of contact with your family, and so that would make it lonely, yeah. And I've found that's one of the hardest things about my job for me, is loneliness.
I understand that, yeah. Maybe the footballers, they still have their footballs, you know, but what do you have? You have your lines to learn in the evening.
Yeah, you have to. People forget that. They think you go home and go to sleep. No, you go home and learn your lines for tomorrow.
Oh my God. Well, we have some questions from the fans, as I've mentioned, and some of them are about your roles. Like, for example, which one of your roles do you consider your greatest success?
Oh, there you go. I don't know. I mean, I've been lucky enough to be in some long-running programs, you know, like The Fast Show and Father Brown and the Harry Potter franchise. So any of them, really. Whoever likes whatever. It's up to other people to choose. You choose for me. You choose. Thank you.
And now with some distance, is there any role that you think you should have played differently?
No. No, I can honestly say that. I remember finishing Harry Potter and was I wearing a wig? Yeah, taking my wig up and saying, "Goodbye, Arthur." You know, a race well run.
So you had a wig that you were
not at first it was dyed, and then that got too difficult because, of course, every time you wash it, so they were always kind of chasing the colour. But then it was a wig for the last few years. Wigs, Don't wear wigs.
Ah, scratchy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot.
Is there any play or any character that you still long to be a part of, to portray?
I don't really do that because I don't believe it's healthy. I don't think it's healthy to want. But there are different. As you get older, so when I was young, you play son, then you play father, and then you play grandfather. So I haven't really played grandfather yet. So that is kind of what I'm looking forward to. I think is playing older characters who can be really miserable. I'd like that. That's what I'd like to do. Play a really miserable
To be miserable?
guy. Yeah, really horrible guy.
Well, because most of your characters were very positive and often of a comedic nature.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever played bad guys, any villains?
Yeah, I know. I've always enjoyed it because they have no moral responsibility to anybody else. Yeah, I like playing bad, and I'm quite good at it as well. I mean, yeah, I've never set out to be funny. I just, it all feels like Hamlet to me.
Even the Fast Show and Red Dwarf.
Yeah, a comedy is the most serious business. Yeah, because it's so binary. Either people laugh or they don't. So there's no margin for error. You're either right or wrong. Laugh, no laugh.
With Stardust movie, that was another big one that you made. You were even able to choose your role, is that right?
Yeah, Matthew Vaughn said, do you want to play one of the kings or a goat that gets turned into an innkeeper who is Michelle Pfeiffer's husband? That one. It was great playing a goat. I really enjoyed that.
Was it like big challenge?
Yeah, I was watching some goats. I went and did some goat research. And the other thing I thought about, of course, is that he's used to the goats with, 4 legs. So when he goes bipedal, he doesn't know what to do with these. They're like, what are these? Legs that don't touch the floor. Yeah, that was fun. Hard work though. That was a hard shoot.
Yeah, and it's a great movie. And also, there's another question. What do you think about the new Harry Potter show, the series that's been announced?
Yeah, well, one of the great things about the franchise was David Heyman steering. He was captain. And I don't understand how they're going to do it with different people for every different, they're going to all look different. Are they going to make them look the same visually, or are they going to focus on different areas? I think it's going to be a soup. I think they'll make 3.
Yeah,
and then they'll just not be able to do anymore. They'll just go like, it's too hard.
Like you think they don't know what they are going to?
I know, unless somebody has got a clear idea of the path all the way through, which is there in the books, but it's much more. There's much more in the book. So how are they going to go backwards and forwards, and all these additional characters? It's going to be enormous. And how do you deal with something that big? Nobody's ever done it really before. I don't think.
Yeah. Arthur used to work in the misuse of Muggle artifacts office.
Yes.
Do you think there are any Muggle artifacts in real life that are getting misused a lot?
Telephones, social media is a misuse, I think. People are getting too addicted to it, and it's affecting relationships badly, I think. The relationships are not so real when Facebook and Instagram and everything are involved. I don't think that's healthy.
You mean like it's dividing people?
Yeah,
instead of
I think it is dividing
them?
people, yeah.
So it's not like the phones, but more the social media.
The social media, yeah.
And the way they're orchestrated.
That's a misuse of Muggle artifacts.
Yeah. And the very last Arthur Weasley question. Do you remember the last occasion you've been amused during your bath time?
I can't remember the last time I had a bath. I have a shower. So there we go. I don't sit in the bath. I'm too impatient.
Oh, so you have no use for the little ducks?
Nope.
Do people often give them to
yes,
you as
they
presents?
do. But I give them to small children. So I'm very grateful to have them, but I pass them on with love.
And also, you know, respect for the nature and everything.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Respect for plastic ducks.
Well, I've got one last question for you, and it's regarding Doctor Who, which is another show that I really like, because in your very last scene, you are sitting on the threshold of TARDIS, eating your little snack, and watching the Earth from above. Would you like to fly to space if you had a chance?
Yeah. Also, I quite like the idea of if you could go in the TARDIS, where would you go? Mm-hmm. And I had an idea that I would go and do historical food. Like, it would be great to go to like a Paris bistro in 1909, or a banquet at the Royal Pavilion in 1780 or something, or go to a Chinese state banquet. Ming Dynasty banquet or something like that. I think that, or go to a Roman dinner. I'd like to do that, or go to a kind of inn where they're roasting meat on a spit. That's my TARDIS. That was what I'll be used TARDIS for.
Maybe go into the future to see what they will be.
No, I think that would be scary. Don't really want to go into the future.
Just for the food. You know?
Just maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, thank you so much for the treat.
Thank you.
That you've given us with this interview, and for keeping in magical touch with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stark.